Disney Parks cast members of Reddit, what's the strangest thing a child has asked you while on the job? Yesterday I went to Disneyland and I saw the parade and it was raining during the parade and everyone was wearing raincoats and the Little Mermaid was in the parade and she was wearing a raincoat too. Why? Well, because everyone else was wearing a raincoat. Ariel wanted to wear one too, so she could be like everybody else. My castmate friend in the call center that took the call above. So, former bus driver here. The strangest question I was ever asked is where do the bus drivers sleep at night? He thought we had houses in the parks and we could choose which one. Best question I've ever been asked was from an adult, and me and the wife still joke about it to this day. I had an uncomfortable stomach that day and I was quite gassy. Thankfully most of them seemed to be silent. On buses, you hear and smell all sorts of things. Candy, kids screaming, the guy who hasn't bathed all trip, etc etc. Well, the time came for me to let one rip. So I sank down deep in my seat and tried to bury one as best as I could. What came out of me was the most foul smelling thing ever released from mankind. Thankfully, again, it was silent. I hope to God that no one would notice and just attribute it to another bus smell. But about 30 seconds after the deed was done, the gentleman standing at the front of the bus pushes his stroller aside, leans forward and says, "Did you just shit yourself?" Hands down funniest thing I've ever had happen while working there. Others have already said it, but the adults are the ones who say the really crazy stuff. I'm sure there's a ton of stuff I'm forgetting and plenty of minor WTF moments, but one that sticks out in my mind was working at Splash Mountain. The ride broke down and we see M's spread out through the ride to go evacuate people. I get to my area to help and there is a guy who is absolutely livid that it's not happening fast enough. He's trying to get out on his own and I let him know that he needs to stay put and wait for the group. He was also in the heart of the ride building. That shit's like a maze. You find a door and walk out it and find yourself an F in Timbuktu. Starting an evacuation takes maybe 10 minutes or so. To get rolling maybe 20 if we've tried to just restart the ride first. Although usually we know right away if it's an evac, so it's a bit annoying. Maybe, at the most. But you would think it was the end of the world for this guy. He's ranting and yelling, and I'm trying to calmly tell him to stay seated until we get to his log. We get the guests out of the logs behind him. SOP is to start with the back log in the section and work your way towards the first. And when we get to his log, he starts ranting about how he pissed his pants in the meantime, gesturing at a wet spot on his crotch. The guests in the log behind him, however, who were very visibly sick of this guy, leaned in and said he absolutely did not pee his pants. We saw him splash the water on himself to make it look like he did. The guy was such a dick that strangers around him were selling him out. Lol. We did manage to finally get everyone out, and I absolutely did not give him anything to placate him, like I would any other guest that's had something go wrong, other than the free fast pass that we had to give him, because everyone gets one. Enjoy walking around the park with your wet crotch, buddy. Not a Disney Park cast member. I'm the strange child. Went to Disneyland back in 2000 or so. I was about 5 or 6 and my first pet goldfish died shortly before we went on our trip. Went to Minnie's house and got to meet her at the end for pictures. I remember there being some cool animatronic goldfish bowl in her house, so I had to tell her how sad I was that my fish just died and my mom made me flush him down the toilet. Of course the actors aren't allowed to talk, so this poor soul playing Minnie had to watch 5-year-old me sobbing for my lost pet fishy and wasn't able to say anything. That Minnie Mouse actor gave me the most heartfelt, warm, sincere hug I have ever had in my life. Shout out to all the Disney Park actors who have ever consoled a crying child. I assure you, you made it better. I worked at Disneyland as a ticket taker / bag checker. Little boy asked me if I was magical because his grandma told him Disneyland was a magical place. Had numerous kids rub my skin because according to their parents, they've never seen a black person before. People touching you without your permission was one of the worst things about that job. My favorite story is this girl was leaving the park and wanted to know how could Mickey just finish Fantasmic but be on Main Street with completely different clothes. Her mind was blown, hands on her head just trying to comprehend how could he be in two places at once. I told her that he has a bunch of underground tunnels so he can avoid the crowds and get to the front to say goodbye. She was satisfied with that answer. Finally, my time to shine. I work in DHS, Hollywood Studios in Walt Disney World, and I've heard some weird ones. I won't say the name of my store, but if you know WDW you'll be able to guess pretty easily. When building lightsabers, I've had multiple younger kids ask me, very genuinely, questions about how I think their lightsaber will look in battle, or how much destruction they are going to cause. It's usually pretty lighthearted and funny, but once I had the sweetest little girl come through my lightsaber station, and at the very end, when we'd finished her saber, very thoughtfully informed me, "Yay, I'm going to stab, insert name of her brother." The majority of the questions I answer are related to Galaxy's Edge. I get asked about 4,000 times a day, where do we build the fancy lightsabers? Where do we build the droids? Is this Rise of the Resistance? Where do I get the colored milk? You get used to it pretty fast. We have a GD Stitch up on the shelf behind the counter. I have to tell 1,000 people a day that we can't sell him because he's a fellow cast member. Last week we gave Stitch a little plastic lightsaber keychain and a kid asked very sincerely, has Stitch ever killed anybody with that? Although my favorite guest interaction was with an older middle-aged woman, not a child. This lady came in, walked up to the counter, and I was assuming she was going to ask me for directions or something. Instead, she asks me, has anyone ever told you that you have the body language of Muppet? And then immediately left the store without another word. I have plenty more stories, but that one will forever stick with me. Didn't work at Disney, but at another worldwide theme park doing pretty much the exact same thing. Parts of the job were very much to make us more like Disney. Highlights I remember was when I was with one of our characters, who obviously can't talk, and I was trying to get a kid to hug the character, and they got confused and gave me a hug. Very heartwarming. And also at Christmas working as an elf in the Santa's grotto, when Father Christmas would ask the kids what they wanted for Christmas, and then the parents' faces when the kids said something they weren't expecting. Strangest things though are when the parents try to get you to admit there's someone inside the costume when you're within earshot of the kids, and get quite persistent about it. Obviously you can never admit that the characters aren't real, or when it goes the other way and people completely forget that there's someone in the costume and basically let their kids assault the character, especially as out of the costumes aren't the easiest to move in, and are quite top heavy, to the extent that one person I was working with got sexually assaulted in costume while I was working with her. I once got stuck in the Pirates water ride, and as it was nearing the end of the ride by where the pirates was singing yo-ho, yo-ho the pirates life for me, our ride got stuck. We thought they will fix it soon, but as it was becoming apparent to us that it's not getting fixed 10 minutes into the maintenance, me and my brothers were getting sick of listening to the Pirates Life on repeat. I yelled in frustration, at least turn off the damn music, not expecting anything. Little did I know that a crew member was listening in, and the song was shut off for the remainder of the maintenance.